criminalization of people who for a lot of time have been criminalized when they are not criminals. So we have put an end to the criminalization of people who are not criminals. Secondly, we are going to curb drug trafficking, cannabis trafficking, by making sure that people who make use of cannabis now have a safe and regularized way from where they can obtain cannabis.
Andrew Hathaway is a professor of sociology at the University of Guelph. He joins us from Ontario, Canada. Professor, welcome to the program. I mean, let's use your country as a good case study, because it's just over 3 years ago that cannabis became legal for recreational use. How's it gone?
How's it gone? Well, there's some government statistics that have been released over the time to compare prevalence rates before and after legalization that suggests that prevalence rates have not changed significantly in terms of use rates in most population groups. There have been some reported increases in among seniors, which I presume could be explained by the fact that there is a segment of the population that was significantly deterred by the criminalization of the drug to not use it until a regulated system of supply came into effect. So that may account for increasing rates among older folks who are more likely to be wanting to be following the law and being compliant. Otherwise, it's not a very exciting story. It's probably worth mentioning that part of the explanation for the lack of significant differences in rates of use may well be that it was widely available to anybody who wanted it prior to legalization, being available through social networks of supply, casual networks of users who take care of supply for those within their groups, without requiring folks to seek that source of supply through criminal enterprises per se, or just taking part in street deals with those who might be designated as clearly as criminals. So by having a source of supply that is readily available through informal channels, the deterrent effect of the law was quite stunted to begin with. So that may account for the fact that we haven't seen dramatic differences as at least as far as use rates. You may have interest in how the new industry is managing with respect to compelling users to switch from illegal to legal sources of supply. I guess it's a good news and a bad news story, depending on which side of the fence you're on. But those within, it's about 50-50 as it stands right now. About 50% of cannabis that is being used in Canada is purchased through legal sources. About 50% is still attained through illegal sources. So the challenge will be in switching folks who are buying illicit sources of supply to the illegal marketplace, particularly bearing in mind that these are folks who are more likely to appreciate the lower cost that they can get on buying it on the illegal market. They're more interested in buying significantly large sources of supply. So it's going to be harder to convince them to switch to a legal regulated product when they're quite happy to attain it through their regular dealers. That gives you a bit of a sense of, at least in terms of use rates, at least in terms of how the legal source of supply has fared in comparison to the illegal market.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the argument that some governments say, look, because it's now legal and because it's regulated, we're actually going to receive tax from the sales of cannabis? Is there a significant tax revenue?
Yes, it is taxed at the source, and that is one of the key reasons that the government of Canada pushed forward with the legislation on public health grounds primarily, but the idea being that taxes collected at the source could be put towards treatment, public education programs, and the like. So that is definitely part of at least the rationale for doing it that way. you can think about it in harm reduction terms, in the sense that, well, money that would otherwise be going to illicit sources available on the black market, now that money is being funneled into government coffers as a result, and potentially that has the ability to provide sources of funding for public programs that reduce the harm that may come as a result of it being more readily available.
What do you think Malta will need to be aware of in terms of the potential health and possibly social dangers? I mean, there are some people who believe that, in fact, I think it may even be medically proven that certain types of cannabis can actually affect the way the brain works. So there are possibly, are there not, pitfalls here as well?
There are certainly concerns that have been raised about use, particularly among young people under the age of 25. The idea being that the brain is still in process of development up until that age. So partaking in regular drug use might be something to be discouraged. Of course, as we know, the cannabis is the most widely used illicit drug, and those kinds of prevention messages tend not to take one very far. I think it's generally accepted now that trying to deter or convince young people from using cannabis by scaring them away based on health messaging isn't particularly productive. So trying to switch more towards encouraging them to be using moderately, perhaps in ways that are less harmful for health. For example, suggesting the use of vaporizing technology to reduce irritation of the lungs, making people aware of the value of pursuing a more moderate pattern of consumption, as opposed to something that is perhaps more all-encompassing and may detract from other areas of their life. So certainly there are concerns, particularly among young people, about increasing prevalence rates. I'm not particularly familiar with the availability of cannabis in Malta more broadly to properly gauge what impact directly allowing a regulated source of supply would make, but at least there's some insights based on Canadian experience.
Professor, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much indeed. Andrew Hathaway in Ontario.